What are you passionate about? Honestly, guys, there's a lot of things that I am passionate about. And but one of them, I will share that with you guys, is I have a passion for learning. And learning can be tons of things. It can be in a music or instrument that you're playing. It could be something that you're learning, whether it's in sewing, computers, whether you're learning how to type, um, what else? Maths. It could be anything, honestly. But for me, what I'm passionate about is learning, and that is in reading, like reading books, and also like watching movies too. But we'll stick to reading books. So why I say I have a passion about reading is because that's where it began for me. That's where it all started. Because reading, for me, what I found over time is I went through these books and started reading, is I noticed a huge difference with the way I talked, the way I spoke, and just, talking with people, and communication and having conversations with people in different ages. As in before I even started to open up a book and a page, I didn't, I found books, well, I did find books interesting, but I wasn't bothered to go and purchase a book and read. But as I started to, when I started to invest in myself and, self growth and all that, and I turned to books, started learning. Yeah, I found every time that I found that I had, I fell in love with reading to the point where I started to read every day, and I would read chapter books. And there was something about chapter books as well that I fell in love with. I don't know whether it was the picture of the book or the thickness of the book, the color, but you look at chapter books, right? And you look at it like, okay, how long is this gonna take me to read? Could take years. But for me, I looked at chapter books as, or you can either look at it like it's a scary book because it's, you think that it's only for like smart, intelligent people, or, and, you wouldn't be able to understand it at all. But for me, I didn't look at it that way because maybe I saw myself as that person, but I didn't look at it that way. I looked at chapter books. I just wanted to open up that book and start reading because, it just looked interesting because there must be tons of stories in that book, especially with the thickness of that book. There's got to be something in there that's going to, spark your imagination or curiosity. But I just found chapter books very, yeah, interesting. And so, anyways, back to what I was saying. I find passion in reading, in chapter books, and somehow reading chapter books, it motivates you to read the book and finish the book at the same time. You want to read every single day because you look at it like, okay, I can finish this book in a week or 2 or 3 days if you're that motivated to get the book finished. And so as I'm reading this book, and I remember one of the first books that I started to read was, it was a book called The Origin by Dan Brown. And Dan Brown is an author, and he has other books too. And I've read that his books are one of the books that I started to read. he's got other books, whether it's, they're called like Angels and Demons, The Da Vinci Code. What else? There's tons of books of his. There's about 6 of them, and I've managed to read all of them. But one of the first books that I read of his was called The Origin. And this book, mind you, it's a chapter book, and you know, having this book as my first book to read, I was just looking at it like, well, I don't know if I'm gonna understand this book, or you know, but you can look at the book as, oh my gosh, it looks scary. But anyways, I opened up this book because I was so eager and interested that I didn't look at it that way. I just knew I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna understand it either way. And so I opened this book, I started reading, and and it comes to, the book is pretty much about this guy, Langdon, Professor Langdon. He's a professor, and yeah, it's a book that's based in Spain or France. Sorry, I'm trying to recall this, what the book is about, because it's been like a year ago that I've read this. But I remember the first book. That was my very first book, and it was it's a science. It was a science art book. It was there was a lot of things that was happening in that book as well. It's about like religion and a lot of questions in that book. And it's, as you're reading this book, it fills your mind with curiosity and questions as well, because you start to ask questions as you're reading this book, and that's pretty much what the book is about. It keeps you engaged and intrigued. And so you have this guy, Professor Langdon, who goes to this museum and he tries to discover the religious, questions. And yeah, anyways, long story short, he's trying to decipher codes and these mysteries, and yeah, it's a very suspense book. But if you haven't come across that book, you should totally, if you're into suspense and thriller, I would recommend that book by Dan Brown. And it comes with a movie as well. So as I'm reading this book, I finished the book and I wanted to read the rest of Dan Brown books. And as I'm reading this book, you're not only just reading, but your mind starts to think as well. Like your mind starts to think about, you picture in your head what the book is telling you, what the book is talking about. And so, and over time, you start to notice that as you're reading, that you're not only just reading, but you picture it in your head, and you're thinking and you're asking questions as while you're reading the book. And yeah, and that's what's interesting about it, is that once I finished that book, I wanted to read the rest of his books. And that's what's so interesting about reading, is you begin to fall in love with books, and you begin to fall in love with reading. And that's why I say that's what one of my passions about, is that I'm passionate about reading, because not only that you're reading, and your mind starts to think in a different way, and you also, your communication, the way you speak and talk to people, is it's like at another level. Like you start to grow and you start to feel confident within yourself, because you have read a chapter book, or you finish reading a book and you have developed, excuse me, and you have developed some knowledge that you didn't know, and it's from reading a book. And that's what's so fascinating about it, is that your mind expands too. You view things differently, and that's some data and knowledge that you have gained for yourself just off reading. And and that's and that's very powerful as well, because you can come across people from all walks of life, and as you have conversations with other people in life, as you interact with them, you can have conversations, because you have things, you have knowledge you have knowledge that they might not know, and that you can share that with them, or you can have talk with or to have conversations with them. And yeah, and as you're reading books, whatever book it is that you're reading, you gain tons of information and knowledge that you will not have expect to know or to learn. But that's what I'm saying, is that, like, if anyone out there that doesn't have passion for reading, you don't need to start off reading with a chapter book. You can start off with a baby book, or you can start off with a little book. And then, as time goes by, if it's something that sparks your interest, of something that interests you, you'll start, reading books that are a bit, like, whether it's for your age, or books that catches your interest, whether it's in history, or well, what else is there, like psychology, can be about like sports books, documentaries, it could be anything. And so, excuse me, guys. So honestly, anything that you're passionate about, you learn something from it, because as long as your mind and your heart, and you're putting your time and energy into it, you will gain tons of information and data, and that's specifically for you, because you're putting in the work. And for me, like, I'm very passionate about reading, and I will keep going with that. I will read until I get old, or I'll read I until I give up reading. I don't think I'll stop reading, because that's how much joy I find in reading books. And yeah, I find that I grow, not just mentally, but my mind grows too, and yes, it expands to a variety of things, and it keeps your mind occupied. It keeps yourself wanting more, like you want to learn more and you want to read more. And excuse me. And that's what I'm passionate about. And that's another thing also, guys, is that passion, if you're passionate about something, you don't see it as it's something that you force yourself to do. Because for me, maybe I did, if I tried to recall when I first started reading, I didn't. I think I had to try and, like, force myself, like pressure myself to read. And then maybe over time, I just fell in love with reading, because it became a habit for me. As I constantly read every day, it became a habit for me. Like, okay, I need to find time to read. And so over time, As days go by, months go by, reading became subconsciously to me. It became something that became natural for me to do. And so I just, every as days go by, I just find time to read, like whether it's my free time, anywhere, any place, and any time. I just find that the more you read, the more you'll grow, the better your communication and is and speaking to people. Excuse me. And so, yeah, I see passion as something that is not forced. It's something that you develop over time, and you fall in love with it, and fall in love with what your passion is, whatever it is that may be. And yeah, and I will constantly read, and and have an open minded to of other variety of books and learning. And honestly, guys, what are you passionate for? If you haven't find what you're passionate about, hopefully over time you'll find what that is. And yeah, that's all for this content, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.